Right, let's
Uh,
do it.
yeah, it is 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, and that means that we are here to discuss the cannabis legalization for the news. Joining me, of course, on the West Coast is my host, Miguel Santiago. How are you, Miggy?
Or Miggy 420, whatever. Doing well. How are you
Miggy
doing?
420. Oh man, I'm doing well. I am able to still breathe and function all right, which is kind of good considering how overworked that I have been. But there was a big news in hemp, which is going to create a lot of demand, and it happened yesterday. The largest state, well, the second largest state in terms of land mass, at least, second largest state in terms of population, Texas went online, and so before we came online, we were trying to find out what the actual spot price of CBD hemp may be, because if there's more demand now, with how many millions of people live in Texas, dude?
Well, and Texas is another of those states that's been fighting for medical, and there's it's a big state, you know,
Yeah.
and being on the border of Oklahoma is going to be huge for their CBD market.
I think being on the border of Oklahoma is not going to be only big for Texas's CBD market, but also for their medical marijuana push because of how cool the Oklahoma medical marijuana market is currently acting. I mean, that's well, crap. I've just hit the wrong link. Hey, Miggy, fill time. I'm going to go send a link somewhere.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oklahoma is a booming market as far as they're like what Washington was when it first started. It was like the Wild West of medical cannabis, where the people who actually took a chance and are planting a seed and putting themselves out there, that's the hard part. You have professionals, people who've been doing things for a long time, and then they decide to jump in the weed, and it's still somewhat frowned upon. So it's going to be a huge incentive for Texas to get on board. Just like, I don't know if you know, but Oregon's bill to do intercommerce just went to the House.
What is Oregon's board to do intercommerce? What type of stuff are they trying to pull in Oregon?
For their cannabis, they're trying to export their cannabis to make it legal for the export. So obviously,
Or are they going to be able to do that? I mean, like the federal law is the federal law, and so it's what is Oregon? I've realized Oregon has a glut of marijuana. They grew so much. They have outdoor farms. The plants are huge, huge supply. What is the price of an eighth in Oregon, Miggy?
dude, I've seen not just eighths but ounces for like $20.
$20 an ounce. My goodness.
I mean,
So they're trying to export it where they can sell it, because like the spot price for marijuana, I thought was like $900 a pound if it's high quality marijuana.
yeah, even their bunk stuff. That's why even here in Washington, if it's bad, the recreational weed's not all bad. Matter of fact, it's way better than the Mexican weed you used to buy 20 years ago when it was illegal. So, that's there. But as far as like, yeah, $900 pounds, Nevada's hurting. If you're a grower in Nevada, you are. I think Nevada only limits a couple of growers too, if I'm not mistaken. But I just know they
Growers
are
for hemp or growers for cannabis? I
for
mean, they're
cannabis.
both cannabis. All right. That's really the problem. They're both cannabis, and so fortunately welcoming Texas, Texas joins many other states that have legalized hemp, and so now Texas is 99% legal. If you want a copy of the actual bill itself, I'll go ahead and share my screen to show you where you can go ahead and find it. Make America Hemp Again. That's a great hat. So it finally did go. And then that links out to this page. You can go to capitaltexas.gov bill lookup and actually read it. But let's just go over the bullet points of it. So yeah, they are going to have CBD, but look at this: 90 days for the pilot plan of the Department of Agriculture. And so, like, I'm going to kind of review that briefly as we're discussing. I'm not sure if it's going to be similar to what they did in Iowa, where they really aren't allowing anybody to farm or to import CBD type hemp until after the Department of Agriculture has actually handed down its regulatory scheme. Hopefully not. But it breaks it down into two kind of things. Regulations are still months away. So when the regulations are months away, you really don't know what can get turned off in the interim. But it looks like that it was effective immediately. So at least that industrial hemp and then CBD hemp, which leads us to our next question: what's the price of CBD today? Now that this other, I think it's 35 million people that live in Texas. I mean, supply and demand, right? So the demand of 35 million people just came online, and the supply is kind of fixed. I mean, we do have planting in Illinois that we can report on, though.
Well, that CBD, they probably had a market there already. I'm seeing billboards here from Bartell's Drugs, promoting full spectrum CBD, which is kind of a joke because full spectrum CBD includes THC, which I don't think just because their name says drugs, they're selling drugs yet. But, we're there. The billboards are there. One day we'll get coupons for fucking CBD, products. I'm sure Texas has a huge market already, but they just aren't aware of it.
Evidently Texas also has a medical marijuana program if you consider 0.5% THC of cannabis, and they always name it the compassionate use program. That doesn't sound very compassionate to limit your medical marijuana patients to 0.5% THC. That's basically hemp. So, like they say, the 0.3% CBD oil is barely different from their marijuana-derived CBD oil that is available to Texas for their extremely restrictive medical marijuana policy. My God, I was reading that. That is the one problem that I really have when it comes to these magic mice. Do you use Max and like Magic Mouse? Have you ever done that?
No.
No? All right. Well, they're very sensitive. And so, like, if you go like that, suddenly you'll go back a page and you're like, hey, I was reading that. Or you'll go forward a page. It's just not the best thing in the world on that. However, the only thing that really looks like that marijuana in Texas is able to be used for is intractable epilepsy. And then they passed a bill this session that's going to include more diseases like autism and terminal cancer. So these people have intractable epilepsy, autism, terminal cancer, and their marijuana is capped at 0.5% THC. Fortunately, the CBD is now going to be out of there and tests of unregulated. This is not the best. HoustonChronicle.com, very sparse on their reporting. Fortunately, though, CBD hemp is going to be coming to Texas. And the current price, I can show you this one right now. If you guys ever do want to see the current price of hemp, make sure you head on over to Penex Exchange. And then once a month, they do kind of like update it. So the May 2019 hemp report, we're going to have to wait until next month to see how it's going. Oh, man, the price of Colorado isolate has, it's come down, and then winterized crude. But, the price, Kentucky, Oregon, Colorado, still Kentucky, probably because they have, less supply. They're the highest. But we'll have to wait and see where Illinois goes on that, or because of these, there's going to be more supply coming online this year, but as Texas is coming online for buyers, there's going to be more demand as well. So where does Illinois, or where does the price of this CBD biomass go? Does it stay at around the $4? Does it go and trend down, or what? I'm not sure, but it's an interesting thing to see what will happen next month. And the planting has been so far behind this year that even though 700 people, farmers in Illinois, signed up to farm hemp, the state is just now getting its corn crop in the ground, and so just now also focusing and turning toward its hemp crop, which there is 90-day seed out there that you can get and various varietals, but it's going to be interesting. And now it's starting to gear up, which is great. Hey, did you hear about any other good news in the medical or adult use marijuana world this week?
Well, Nevada just banned the employers from doing the screening for jobs.
That's right. Nevada has, and that law will go into effect in January of 2020. So Nevada, AB 132, signed by Governor Steve Sisolak. Wow. Does that mean that Nevada, their mayors, I'm sorry, Nevada doesn't have a mayor. There's many mayors in Nevada, but Nevada has a governor. But Sisolak, it's kind of like Moe's name from The Simpsons, right? Moe's name, Moe Sisolak.
That was it?
Yeah. So anyway, it makes it unlawful for any Nevada employer to fail or refuse to hire someone if they test positive for marijuana. Of course, there are exceptions, like any law. Firefighters, EMTs cannot test positive, as those applying for jobs that require some type of motor vehicle or jobs of the federal government. The jobs of the federal government, of course, make sense. it is a Schedule I drug to the federal government. I'm not sure about the whole EMTs, firefighters, motor vehicle. I mean, that gets back to those headlines about driving while high or driving while medicated. Do you think it's fair to restrict people from smoking cannabis in states where it's legal for like their commercial driving license?
Yeah, because the argument's really weak when they say, "Well, how would you like your surgeon to be stoned while they're treating you?" And the thing is, with this whole cannabis prohibition, we've gone away from treating our citizens like adults, like to have personal responsibility.
Right.
Instead, we're going to protect you from yourself, and we can't trust that you can save or shoot a gun or save a citizen, but you can't smoke a doobie, or at least know better on when to not smoke one before work. Dude. So yesterday, my son just graduated high school from
Congratulations, man!
Yeah,
Graduated high school.
It was an awesome experience, but the thing is, I've been a cannabis consumer his whole lifetime, and pretty much open about it. And he graduated from a private school, a $30,000 a year private school.
You're paying $30,000 a year to send your kid to high school? Do not talk to my girlfriend. She would.
No, not just high school. From sixth grade to freaking high school to graduation. It was an insane amount of people. Like the people who had fuck you money that went to the school. It was just more like I always felt I was happy, like he was safe space type situation. But and now he's going to college. And I'm just saying. Well, my point being is the cannabis consumption and the cannabis intellect does not make you a lesser human being or a lesser citizen. There's got to be a common sense approach to all this shit.
True. I mean, would you want your surgeon operating on you if he just spent the whole night worrying about something else, like if his marriage is falling apart, or if he has some other addictive disorder, or if he's just, if he's a compulsive gambler and he's got hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line? There's all sorts of things that could screw with somebody's concentration and their head, despite cannabis, which, if cannabis was going to be a detriment to people driving motor vehicles, you should be able to see it in the data. And that data, of course, is taking time to emerge because it's been illegal to study this stuff for so long. But from states that have passed cannabis legalization and then have been able to do subsequent tests regarding medicated driving, those tests really haven't found the same types of risk profiles that you have with alcohol and driving. So I don't understand, other than it's our own prejudice and bias, why we are trying to legislate that particular thing. Say, well, okay, adult use is fine, but not for this thing.
Yeah, or not for your job, because we can't trust you to be a grown-up and not know when you're intoxicated enough to not go fight a fire, or I'm pretty sure that guy doesn't want to lose his life in that sense. So I used to deal with firefighters when I was younger. When I was 18, I've dealt with college professors. I've dealt with firefighters. A lot of people couldn't openly go to a store and buy stuff, and when you're an 18 with long hair, which went away a long time ago,
right? But I just don't understand how could if you're worried that the firefighter is going to be high, I don't get it. The firefighter who is on marijuana still understands, oh, there's the fire, I need to put that out. Are they going to be like, whoa, man, the fire? Yeah.
We could cook so many marshmallows on that.
Oh, yeah.
CJ.
It doesn't make any sense. Oh, yeah, but that firefighter who's high he's going to forget his hose. That's what's going to happen. But this new law in Nevada is going to go into effect on January of 2020. So it's going to be illegal to ban employment based on marijuana tests, unless, of course, your job includes spraying water on a fire, which, again, a little ridiculous. But you have to start somewhere. All these laws, when it comes to the cannabis liberalization, except for your case where you were talking about medical marijuana in the state of Washington, where you had people buying it at farmers markets?
Oh yeah, it was beautiful, man. You walk in, you just buy an ounce or two, and call yourself good. You can even do consumption on the site. You know,
No. Yeah, that is just blowing my mind. All the other ones, they start with a very draconian bill. I mean, I've been going through the Illinois adult use bills, and so like over the weekend, oh, you can kind of make it out. Like that's I got a $100 teleprompter from Amazon, and because like these laws are really dense, and so the application form is going to be like phone book thick. And most businesses that are in operation do not have all of the policies and documents and contracts that this application requires that you have simply to be eligible to be selected to have a license.
for medical.
That, no, this is for adult use.
Oh,
Yeah, for the craft grows of
yeah.
5,000 feet square foot of flowering space. That's it. You have to have all this security and employment policies and a 2,500 word diversity policy. And so I got a teleprompter to help me like say every single freaking thing that's on there. And these applications are going to be very thick.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, what are they doing? Well, they're growing 500,000 square feet of flowering space for marijuana. Those draconian regulations may one day come down to where you were. What year was this farmers market that you could just buy an ounce at?
Washington had medical from 92 to 90. Well, since the inception of in 2012 of recreational, it slowly evolved from just a caregiver structure. And then
Yep.
the caregiver structure, just like in California, where someone said, okay, well, now I'm going to care for 10 people. And so they'd open a store because they had excess materials. Then when people come into the store, they say, hey, I need you to sign this piece of paper. Washington's a very libertarian, hard-on type place where it's like,
Oh no, I've talked to you enough now. Like I always hear your rejoinder, and I've explained to you like it's different in the Midwest. Here I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Save me from myself, government. I'm just a terrible sinner. And like your concept of this personal liberty is intriguing to me, and I would like to subscribe to your newsletter.
it was a neat setup. I mean, people, and that's where I think Oklahoma is at right now, where people are popping up. They're being brave enough to stand up and say, I'm going to be part of this industry. I am not the stereotype. I'm just a normal citizen. You know, uh, it's the only thing I've gotten to why I've got a name for myself. It's not because I sell weed, but just because I talk a lot about it and maintain a 9 to 5. It's just I'm just an average citizen that likes to consume and doesn't want to go to jail like everybody else. But back then, when Washington was just medical, it was like a private club almost, where everybody was just kind of like a signed paper. We agreed to this agreement. There's no police involved, so there was never ever any. Whenever there was a raid, it was probably because the business was in the center of a main street and they had a lot of traffic, and so they were just getting a lot of attention, which is unfortunate because then they're just good at their business. But they got attention, and that's where the raids would happen. But
Yeah, no, they would just get shut down. I don't think, and I've heard that there's more slippage in the legal adult markets out on the West Coast because they had this history of having fairly open medical marijuana laws from 20 years ago. Over here in the Midwest, that was all a crime. And now we are just able to have medical marijuana, but our medical marijuana is so restrictive in Illinois that when you go into the dispensary, first off, you're matched with a dispensary. So there's no consumer protection for being able to go to whatever store you want. You're matched to a particular dispensary. That's it.
wow,
Second, you are not allowed to look at the flower at all while you are in the dispensary.
that is crazy. Yeah, I mean, when I first moved to Washington State in 2012, I believe. No, before that, 2000. I got out in 2007 in the Navy, so about 2009 is when I came out here. And the first thing I did was got my medical script. It was just a big piece of paper. In California, you had a little ID, but for us, it was actual a written script. I would take that around state because my job at the time required me to be a traveling technician. And if I was in Western Washington, I was like, oh, I want to get some weed. I would just go to the dispensary locally and show them my paper. They call and verify, and that was it.
But they did actually have to call it verify. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Yeah. No.
Washington State, their claim of like no regulation just meant there was no database for people to verify stuff, and some people were getting their stuff tested, but that was what the regulation was missing in the medical side, was the testing.
Oh, okay. Well, to not have that problem, and also to not just have it all open in the out there and unregulated, the Illinois has really clamped down as to what you can put in the flower, and that is great regarding the purity of the flower and the safety for the consumer in that aspect. And we've talked before, and you've spoken to on how in Washington state, sometimes there can be shit in your weed that you would probably not want if you had more control over what you knew was being put into the chemicals that are going to grow that weed.
Yeah, we're getting recalls. We have Uncle Ike is a shop out here, a cannabis shop.
Not Uncle Ike's. I have a mug from Uncle Ike's from back when I was there 4 years ago.
No, they're good. Uncle Ike's. So what they're doing is they're implementing a program, though. It's called the OK program. Mm-hmm. And so what they're doing is randomly testing products on their shelves for pesticides and metals.
Oh,
and
that's good.
Yeah,
that's good. I'm kind of worried a little bit about the metals that are going to be found in the hemp crops, especially the smokable flower hemp crops from the open air hemp that we are growing now in Illinois, in tobacco country, in Montana, in all these other states. It looks like, one day you'll be able to grow in Iowa and in Texas, but not this year. It won't be until after the USDA has those regulations out. However, like hemp or marijuana or the cannabis plant does pull out those heavy metals. And if it's just been row crops after row crops after row crops for decades, and they've just been dumping heavy metals and other stuff, they've just been dumping all these chemicals on that. I'm worried that the hemp flower that we are going to be making for the next couple of seasons until after the soil has been fairly cleaned, that might not be something that I would necessarily want to smoke.
No, that's a great concern, a health concern, especially for people with weakened immune systems. I think that's part of the problem where people can't get past that cannabis is medicine, is because they're like, well, you smoke it, and they just quickly associate cannabis with cigarettes, like tobacco, where you're applying this smoke into your lungs, which it's not bad for you. The heat probably.
Right. That's the thing. And then whenever they say, oh, the smoke into the lungs, I say that's when we hit them with the Irv Rosenfeld, or you just gave me that picture. What's the name of the adult use? It's not the adult use patient. What's the name of the federal medical marijuana patient that was at Hemp Fest with you last year?
Oh, LV Muskie.
Yeah. How long has she been a federal patient? Because it's been closed since like George W. Bush's dad, H.W. Bush, closed it like in 1991.
Well, I believe that she was one of the original 10 patients, and that's from the 70s, I believe.
Oh, yeah. It was like 76, because it was one of the things that they thought they were going to be able to do, because it was like the novel drug or the innovative drug program or something, the IND from 1976. Yeah. And they thought, and the NORML was involved in it, and they thought that would be one of the things that they could use to get toward legalization. But then you remember what happened.
They stopped the program.
It was Morning in America, and Ronald Reagan was elected. And the program kept expanding a little bit throughout that. And they stopped the program in the early 1990s because of what disease?
Oh, AIDS.
Because of AIDS. And then too many people were going to get involved and get their medical marijuana through the feds. And then they shut down that program. And a couple of years later, the West Coast started all of their medical marijuana programs. And the rest is history.
I have a horrible joke where I say that legalization's off the back of gay men. But it is true, though. Prop 215 didn't happen. So many people were sick. That's the unfortunate part. We had to have this, not an opioid crisis, but a humanitarian sick crisis, and that was, it showed when cannabis helped them. How can you deny someone that? That's an unfortunate part of all that.
Yeah, Trump just kind of like signed a very similar thing, like the Choose Not to Wait Act or something, where now patients that have certain terminal conditions can kind of bypass the, and I should Google that right now just to get the specifics on it, but kind of bypass some of the regulatory red tape as to the drugs that need to be, granted the FDA clearance before they can be used, similar to that novel drug program that the feds had over 40 years ago in the 70s that led to the federal medical marijuana patients. And the point of that story is we were discussing how cannabis isn't like tobacco, and it doesn't necessarily, even though you're smoking it, give you lung cancer. And the evidence for that, of course, is like L.V. Musgrave, Irv Rosenfeld, all these world record joint smokers. You know, we can put Willie Nelson in there. Like if this gave you cancer, they'd be dead.
Yeah, well, if it gave you cancer, cancer rates would have definitely increased in the United States so far.
Oh, that is absolutely right. Right. I mean, not only is that accurate, but then also you'd have the argument they always say this marijuana is different than your grandfather's marijuana, and it's going to give you insanity. It's going to make you have what do they call the insanity? It's not just they say psychosis, paranoid, schizophrenia. It's going to give you schizophrenia. It's going to make you nuts. If that's the case, how come we haven't seen an increase in all of these mental health problems as marijuana usage rates have clocked their ways from like 0 or 5%, 30 years ago up to like 20% in states like yours, and in a few years, states like mine?
But that's such a garbage statement just because the cannabis that you acquired from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, for the most part, was in the back of a trunk, wrapped in cellophane, probably soaked in gasoline, and it had more bad stuff just added to cover the smell, and that you still
Right.
bought it,
Right. Yeah. It's not like grandfather's weed. There's less seeds and it's more free from impurities.
Yes.
Whether or not like an apple is any more, I mean, of course, with selection, you can always make traits of whatever plant. You can breed for those particular traits. And because of that type of breeding, we have gotten our THC levels up to over 30%. But that doesn't mean that they couldn't have done that 2,000 years ago when they were doing the Iranian landrace. Well, that's back before they had strain names. Like, when these plants were being grown in the land in which they were indigenous, if they were being grown correctly for these particular cannabinoids, and then, I don't know, turned into hash as they were, yeah, that stuff still would have been just as concentrated and powerful as anything that Granddad was smoking back in the 50s.
And with that, it's like with the hashish. I would say concentrates are just another form of old ways of smoking. It's just another. We just got more advanced with like nitrous or CO2 or pressing with the rosin. We have better understanding of it. But
I love pressing. I love pressing with the rosin. That's something that I'm really looking forward to. Once we have full legalization in Illinois, I want to get one of them rosin pressers, and then kind of rent that out, because that's just a very satisfying thing when you have that much high quality cannabis flower that you put in there, and then you put it into the rosin press, and you just see the stuff come out. It's just great.
No, it's pretty neat, and you can buy them for like at home productions too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's really cool. And like the rosin cartridges that you get out here are so much better than some of the other concentrate cartridges that you get. I mean, the flavor on it is just so much sweeter, and the terpene profile is really in there. It's just the way that if I'm going to get a vape pen, I'm going to gravitate toward the live rosins.
And that flour, that once you press it, it's still good for it to be decarboxylized and used in maybe a butter or something like that. So.
Really? I thought the pressing, first off, I thought the pressing used a little bit of heat, so it decarboxylated it. And then I also thought that pressing just basically left, because that's what I thought it did. I thought it was kind of like using, you remember those things that girls will use to straighten their hair, and those little clamp thingamajiggers, whatever those are called, please leave it in the comments. So that is how I've seen them make that rosin, where it's heated and it's squished. And so because it's heated and squished, it liquefies, and then it goes out, and it's usually, liquefied between like two pieces of not cray paper. What's the type of paper? Parchment paper that you could use, wax paper. Well, probably not wax. Wax would probably melt, but like parchment paper or something that you would use, and then you could scrape it off that. It's pretty sweet.
Well, it's like 99% of it. I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's still a material product that can be used for, other people who, it's like an animal that you kill and you try to use all the parts.
What are you? Are you Native American? I mean, I remember how we killed all the buffalo, us white people. We just shot them, and then we didn't even get off the train. the train just kept going, and we shot him. And it's like, wow, I am a bully day or whatever, because that was back hundreds of years ago. Hey, but let's add this study to the pile. Another study has come out and shown that legal medical marijuana has been tied to lower opioid use. As soon as a state allows medical marijuana, the opioid use goes down. That's the amount that it goes down is stronger when pain is allowed to be one of the conditions that gets you medical marijuana prescriptions. But that's one of those things where here's another one of those studies. So the science is being replicated, and the science is being replicated, but nobody cares. Like, that's the thing. The tobacco industry didn't give two craps that one study after another study after another study kept showing that tobacco smoke may cause lung cancer. They just kept saying, maybe we need a better cartoon camel to sell this to children, and so despite all the science continuing to be replicated, people are just slow to change when there's prejudice and money involved.
Well, and I think, with this hemp legalization, of course, hemp is cannabis, but with the technicality of the THC, as more people become more aware of the plant itself, I think that's the biggest issue too. We're facing 100 years of ignorance. I grew up with this plant, so I knew it was never going to kill me. And then as I see adults, or even high school kids, just like excess alcohol. I had friends fucking end up in ditches and have alcohol poisoning from just, being young and stupid. And never have I smoked so much that I ended up in the hospital.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see it every college year. Granted, it's summer vacation right now, so all those kids are probably going out and getting drunk and then, arrested. But you'll hear about that fraternity or some college party gone wrong where people get injured and maybe even die. You rarely hear about that one time that a bong rip went wrong, except where the bong rip could go wrong and you're coughing and you spill your bong and either break it or pour the water out and it stinks. Like, that's the extent of the terrible injuries and the bad effects that I've heard from the stories of people going out and getting high versus people going out and getting drunk. That's not to say that going out and getting high always ends well, but it typically ends better on average than going out and having 85 beers and getting blackout drunk.
And again, it comes down to personal responsibility. I mean, if you're dumb enough to do so many drinks, and I hate to say it, like me and my wife, we'll be drinking, and I stop about maybe 4 or 5 beers. I mean, I'm really having a good time. But usually I'm just good after a couple, and then I call it good. My wife thinks it's still party time. I'm like, babe, I gotta go to bed. I mean,
yeah.
I don't want to stop.
Well, that's the other thing. That's the test of an addictiveness in a substance. Remember the rats that would step on the pedal to get cocaine. So it's the amount of self-administration. And I'm sure that you can speak to the time that you've maybe done like a dab rip, or you've done like the biggest bong rip, like the highest you've ever been, and you just usually kind of go like, need to take a little break here. Okay.
Speaking of that, I'll be taking on June 29th, I'll be taking a one dab rip. We're doing a promo with a company. We're about 10 of us, and we're all going to be doing one dab rips.
What's a one dab rip?
It's like a 1 gram dab.
Oh no! A 1 gram dab. Oh my! Oh goodness!
Yeah, people want to do it. I was like, well, it may kill me, but I'll still do it. But
if it doesn't kill you, if it does kill you, I will do the news in memoriam of Miggy 420, the first person to ever die of cannabis overdose.
But 2 years ago, a friend of mine, David Wazowski from Safer, Arizona, he ate a pound of marijuana on live stream.
But wait, did he eat a pound of live marijuana that was decarboxylated?
No, just a regular. They had that. They contemplated that too. Do they decarb it first or just eat it? So he just ate it though instead of.
Yeah, but just eating it, you're not like you probably that's a lot of fiber. That's a lot of plant material and roughage. But like it would not have gotten him high. So he didn't even get high, right? He probably just had some gas or something.
Yeah, he was stuffed and filled up, and it just makes for a good point where people are the ignorance, with the hemp versus cannabis and the THC levels, and and how just there's so much ignorance about it. So when
There's a
people,
lot. There is
yeah,
a lot of ignorance, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to do that challenge if the cannabis was decarboxylated. Actually, I'm doing a piece for a publication, and then also, for these. So one of the ones that I'll get to eventually, after I do the dispensary one, will be the infuser license. And the infuser license in Illinois doesn't even go online for applications until after the first of the year. But there's a lot of these cannabis supper clubs. Have you been hearing about those types of supper club parties?
yeah, I think we talked about it last
Mm-hmm.
week. Where your industry is going to be very word of mouth in the beginning. People are going to be between wary investors and people who already have money and have a network. It all comes down to your network.
Right.
Who you pay. If you're safe in your county, in your zone, I imagine some counties are going to have moratoriums against it, and some are going to be embracing it because they know it's going to be great income. We have a festival
Sure.
up here in Bellingham, up north, and it's being held in conjunction with the city's tourism.
So wait, you guys like are having kind of like a bong appetit in Bellingham, Washington, where you're gonna do these types of food events? Because that's what I was gonna get back to, is that the idea of a supper club actually kind of goes back to prohibition. That's how you'd go get drunk. You'd go to a club where you'd have dinner and drinks and dancing, and you'd stay like the whole night. So it was a lot more difficult for you to get busted because you had to be a member of the club to go in. And so with that, now there's these cannabis supper clubs, kind of like the Bong Appetit show that makes these delicious, delicious meals with cannabis infusions. And so I had to look into the legal. Of course, it's going to be illegal, but Illinois already has decriminalized approximately 3/8 of an ounce of possession already in the state. And then after January 1st, of course, you'll have like a whole ounce will be legal. So I did some math on that, making some assumptions. The first assumption is the ounce is 30 grams. It's a pretty fat ounce. It's got an extra 2 grams. But then also you'd have approximately 25% THC, which is it's a high amount of THC. It's not crazy. It's not over 30%. So then if you have 30 grams at 20% THC, that's 6 grams of pure THC. And you're thinking about doing one of those grams as a dab. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's going to be an interesting day. We're going to videotape it. I'll send you the link when we do it and everything.
You gonna put it on YouTube?
Yeah. Well, it's again for my buddy's studio. It's called HiTunes Interactive. He's doing VR and augmented reality.
No shit.
Yeah,
You're doing augmented reality in the cannabis space is going to be like doing training videos. Like, here's how you can trim appropriately. Here's how you're supposed to do spacing. Let's trellis the weed, all that type of stuff. Or what's his AR VR application for cannabis?
no, that's a great idea though. But what he's doing right now is just working with music. He wants to do. He already has a contract with Redman, so he has his app where if you take the app and you see any Redman logo, Redman's videos will pop up front, a little interactive with Redman. Other things he's doing, we do our pre-rolls that we sell out here. Some are going to have a QR code on them. And if you scan that QR code, that musician will pop out and sing for you, that kind of thing. Or like using this VR, because Google just enabled VR to their search engine. So
whoa, Google's already doing VR search. That's going to be something that I have to get my stuff onto then, because that's as Google updates its algorithm, like one of the things that you try to do is just stay on top of that so that you can continue to be, when people Google cannabis lawyer, and I want them to find me. And so you have to kind of stay on top of the trends, and the trends that we are on right now is voice search. How do you create your web content in such a way that when Google is looking it over, it understands that your content can speak to types of voice searches that Google is being asked throughout the day, 63,000 times per second by people that are searching for things. But now they're going to start doing VR search. I mean, of course they are, but I just didn't think we were already there. I mean, it's 2019.
Well, there's already a huge. I'd like to get an Oculus, but I have too many kids right now. But
yeah, you would never. That Oculus would not be yours. It would be your children's.
Yeah, I would never see it. So, but I mean, there's a huge community already out there for these VR interactions. People walking around. I mean, if you just have your
I think you're in Seattle. You're in the future. Like I'm in Central Illinois. We just got hemp. We were like, wait, so this isn't corn? No, it's not corn. You sure this isn't corn?
well, as much as we are forward, we're also going back. I mean, it's more of a, I think, settling of the law where it's going to come back to common sense because as soon as recreational took over, all that stuff that I talked about with the markets and the consumption, they all disappeared because before there was no authority over the recreational market or the medical market. There was no legal authority. But as soon as there was a recreational structure, now you had the state sheriffs and the state police all on board to regulate and delineate who belongs where. And a lot of people got in trouble right away just because they were enforcing the recreational rules. And which means no smoking on site, no swag given away, which is the weird one.
And by swag, you do not mean shitty weed. You mean like stuff with your logo on it.
Yeah. T-shirts, hats, pens. And then this goes back to that Hemp Fest fighting for the freedom of speech type thing again.
Right. And that's something that I did just create a post on. And I have the lawsuit around here somewhere. If I wasn't so buried in so many darn projects, I probably already would have read it. But yeah, Thurston County Superior Court, complaint for injunctive relief. That's the type of relief that you get when you say, stop it. And a judge says, that's right, sir, stop it. Boom. It's different than monetary relief, which is also called damages. What you learn when you tune into Cannabis Legalization News, Wednesdays at 2.
Nice plug.
Yeah, you gotta be plugging that. But I just think it's really, really interesting that once the state police got involved out west by interfering with the medical, there was some problems. And the way that they've got it set up here, I'm a little unsure of because of how they're going to have all these new dispensaries and whatnot coming online. And they say that in the law, they've made medical permanent in Illinois. They've expanded the amount of conditions you can get. And they said that they aren't going to disrupt or change the medical marijuana laws. And because of that, that means the medical marijuana licensing. And because of that, that means that not all these new dispensaries that are going to be opening, from my understanding, will be medical marijuana dispensaries. So like, if I want to go and get my marijuana at medical prices, I'd still have to go to my dispensary is Trinity. It's over in Peoria. Great people. See them soon. And then I can get my medical marijuana, but because they're also going to be able to open for adult use on the first of the year and get a second location pursuant to the adult use dispensary section of section 25 or 15, I believe is the dispensary one, then they're going to have a second location. Now, this is a medical marijuana dispensary with a second location. I don't know if that second location will be able to have only adult use marijuana or if it will also be able to have medical marijuana. But then the 75 licenses that will be awarded for conditional adult use dispensing organizations next summer, I think that those are just the adult use dispensaries. I don't think that those are medical marijuana dispensaries. So they would just be the 21 and older and the higher tax amounts. But from my review, it looks like that they would be able to display the product quite a bit more. However, we do not have the regulations from the state to see how much display they can do. Because like I've been to Ike's in Seattle. I was at Den Rec a couple of months ago when I spent St. Patrick's Day in Denver. And at Den Rec or in Denver or I mean like there's like grow rooms sometimes adjacent to the dispensaries in Colorado, which I don't think they're going to be able to have in Illinois at first. There's something on that we can talk about, and we will be talking about in the coming months and weeks. But the dispensing will, who knows? Because when you walk into the medical dispensary now, it's just all in packages. So like it's already all in packages, and you can't see the actual marijuana. Like you can't have a jar of the particular strain that you want to buy for display purposes. But in the Illinois adult use dispensary laws, it looks like you can have that display jar. So at least then you can inspect like the various types of flower that are in stock and go like, that one looks like awesome. Get me 3 grams of that.
So you guys already have package requirements for your medical side.
Our package requirements for our medical side are pretty stringent. Yeah.
I just think, like in Washington, the takeover didn't happen overnight. First, 502 took place, our recreational law, and then I think it took about 3 years for the recreational market to just, you're going to have people gunning for your medical on how to dissect it. Because the eventual nail in the coffin for Washington State Medical was SB 5052, entitled the Patients Care Act. So, I mean,
oh yeah, the naming conventions of always name laws either with funny acronyms that say a word about the law or ironically as shit.
Yeah, and their adding was to protect the patient. We're going to create a registry, and we're going to demand that these things come in place for your recreational weed, so you don't have to bother with your dispensaries anymore. It was a total sham of a law passing, but people with money are able to do that. They're the ones that had the lobbyists, and
that's right. They're the ones that had the lobbyists. They're the ones who hired Frank Luntz to have people sit in a room and say like, well, what word do you like better? Global warming, climate change. And actually work. And that's why we're talking about adult use cannabis, and that's why we're talking about cannabis instead of marijuana. All these consultants have come in to see what people already think, what they already like, and then package it in a certain way that it becomes very, very difficult to argue against. And that's why if I ever become an elected official, all of my bills will be the Puppies Need Love Act of whatever. And then the contents of the bill have nothing to do with puppies.
And that just seems to be how politics work, which is unfortunate, right? I mean,
how dare you, sir? How dare you be against the Puppies Need Love policy?
That would be a good argument, though.
Well, yeah, but then if you dig into the Puppies Need Love policy, it's all about giving away corporate handouts to coal miners and petroleum miners. And it has nothing to do about puppies. And it's just terrible, terrible 20th century policies.
Hey, did you see DC's getting closer to having legal weed there?
Well, DC has always had, well, they haven't always. DC has had legal weed for a while, but I have heard that they're getting closer to having legal weed sales.
Yeah, dispensaries.
Yeah. That's something that we have to, well, that when I was doing the Cannabis Supper Club article, that's kind of like one of the things that you can make it less bad. It's like, okay, because right now in Illinois, it's 3/8 of an ounce you can have in possession, and it's not legal, but it's decriminalized. It's a civil violation. That's it. Pay your ticket and get out of here. Yeah. But if you have an ounce after the first of the year, that's legal. And an ounce of weed is more than a 3/8 of an ounce of weed is a lot to cook with. I mean, I'm not going to try to eat some brownies or very many brownies if I took like 1/8 of an ounce of high quality marijuana flower and made some canna butter out of it.
Well, the thing about cannabis too is you do need a large amount. If we're like real sick people, to make that oil, to make the RSO, to make a decent supply of medicine for somebody's really just bad ailments, you need pounds. You need pounds.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you need pounds, but then you can do the math. I mean, like the raw flower itself is maybe like 25% of these THC and other cannabinoids and terpenoids that may have medicinal purposes. So if you have a pound, then that pound of weed might only be 25% medicine at the end of it. Well, is only 25% medicine. Yeah.
Well, and also once you go from a pound to extract to the oil, you're left with a couple of ounces.
Mm-hmm. And then some of those, yes. And I don't know. I'm not an expert in Rick Simpson oil. I hope that I'm never an expert in Rick Simpson oil because I'm trying to avoid cancer. But it's nice to know that it's out there.
Yeah, no, and Rick Simpson oil is good. In Washington, we do have, it's kind of weird how we have these milligram settings for food, 10 milligrams, 100 milligram max. So each thing.
Yeah, that's what we have. That's kind of like when I was doing the math on how much cannabis can you have at your Cannabis Supper Club. Possession, don't sell. That makes it a crime. So if it's just possession, and here, try these brownies. That's
But
different, but yeah, go ahead.
well, I was say, so we got that 10 milligram limit, but at the same time, I can buy a tube of RSO, probably about a quarter or an eighth build up of a nice amount of weight. And
Yeah.
with that tube, you'll put that into your food. You'll infuse your own food with it.
Yeah, they have similars. They call them drizzlers here in Illinois. So like you can get a gram of concentrate for about the same price that you can get, maybe like an eighth of an ounce of high quality cannabis. And so that gram of concentrate it's a pretty good deal. And then you can use that gram to make your brownies or whatever. And we have the same type of 10 milligram dosing aspect. So when I was doing the math as to like how much food you could make from what's currently legal or at least decriminalized in the state of Illinois, if you take like that ounce of cannabis and then you net everything out into like how many grams of THC and then net that out to like 10 milligram servings, that would be 600 servings for an ounce of marijuana. If that ounce is 30 grams and the marijuana is 25% THC, that's 600 edibles if the edible quantization of a serving is 10 milligrams, and that is just kind of standard across the industry. I mean, 25 milligrams at the high end. If I don't want, I really don't want to go through and have like 50 milligrams in my system unless I'm at a party and I have nothing to really think about, because 50 milligrams would be enough to knock me on my ass pretty good. But everybody's a little different.
And the other problem too, though, with that 50 milligrams is if you have 50 milligrams in a brownie versus a cookie, because then you're going to fill up at the same time that you're eating. So, like with the RSO, and I just posted in the comments because somebody asked about, I heard RSO is better to eat on its own. You take about the size of a grain of rice if you're treating it like an ailment. That's what most people start with. And
well, how much weight is that size of a grain of rice for that RSO?
It's probably in a milligram size weights, not a gram. It's a very minute. And then you work your way up to see how you feel. That's the only problem with this. When you say cannabis is medicine, it's all about titration. It's all about self knowing what your body's about.
Yeah, and that's when I could see people getting in trouble with cannabis supper clubs if they are like those Bong Appetit. Have you seen that show where they make those dishes?
Yeah. Oh, they look delicious.
Yeah, they look delicious, but like they put a lot of cannabis in there, and then sometimes they do use hemp, so they'll put like a lot of CBD in there to get that entourage effect and kind of try to mitigate the effects of the THC and bring it down to earth a little bit. But I'm watching how much cannabis they're putting in those foods, and I'm like, dude, those people are going to be asleep here soon.
But with edibles, I don't know what your experience is, but for me, it's always been I've never really gotten high at the moment from an edible. It's always like later in the night when I'm like rested.
Oh man, yeah, I remember it was back in 2013, and the movie Wolf of Wall Street was popular, and my buddy came back from Steamboat, Colorado, and brought all these caramels, and that was my first real experience with like high quality edibles. And then so I looked into decarboxylation, and I started making my own little pills that I would take, and each one of those pills was probably maybe like 50 to 100 milligrams of THC. And so I would call them lemons, like after the Quaaludes from the movie Wolf of Wall Street, because they would you would take it and then you would wait like 4 hours and then you would just be blazed. But when I first started doing that, there was a slight learning curve, and I would wake up high as shit.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like always, I have the best sleep off edibles.
Yeah, and then you wake up, you're like, and your eyes are all red, and you're still high, and you're like, well, that's not the worst way to wake up in the world. That's not so bad.
Right. I mean, a weed hangover is a lot better than a beer hangover.
Oh yeah, like no headache. Like you're still thirsty for both of them, but you don't feel like death when you have a weed hangover. And when you wake up and you're still high, you're like, dude, I'm still baked.
Coffee cures a weed hangover for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, alcohol, not so much. Like alcohol, you can feel like shit for hours and hours. But with weed, you got a cup of coffee and a glass of water, and you're good.
Hey, I gotta be stepping out.
Yeah. Well, we've done it again. We've spent an entire hour speaking about cannabis legalization news, but also politics and shit and all that other stuff. And thanks, Miggy, for taking the time over your lunch break. and everybody for joining us. And I'll see you next week here at 2 p.m. on Cannabis Legalization News. If you have any questions or anything of other interest that you think we should discuss on the news, please leave them in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and like this, and then Google Cannabis Lawyer and find my website, cannabisindustrylawyer.com, and get in touch with me if you need anything. Bye-bye.